My name is Diego Santoyo, and this is my individual oral. I would like to talk about Bob Dylan, and specifically in his poem Blowin' in the Wind, in which he implies that people are unable to live their lives peacefully due to being surrounded by conflicts and more. He backs this up by stating, yes, and how many seas must a white dove sail before she sleeps in the sand? This is a rhetorical question asking the reader, how long will people be unable to have peace throughout? And he does this through the symbolism of a white dove, which is the universal symbol for peace. Next, Dylan expresses that the conflict seems to continue forever as a consequence of people turning a blind eye. If it does not affect them, which is which is mostly true due to people not really caring about what other countries may need, uh, and mostly caring about what their country needs, even during times of peace. Lastly, Bob Dylan asked a question: how many deaths will it take till he knows that too many people have died? This is supposed to signify how people kill during war, but they do not realize what they are doing, and they don't realize how wrong it is of them to continue the massacre. And and the he in this specific quote um, is supposed to address like countries that are conducting war and killing unnecessary people like civilians that are not fighting back and are just trying to live their lives peacefully, but were unintentionally involved in such a conflict. In his poem, Dylan appears to write in hopes of getting people to realize the truth about world conflicts in order to change society to to become more active in stopping such things from occurring. And he does this specifically through mentioned symbolism, rhetorical questions, and the tone of his poem. The tone being one that is mostly grim and really serious, just to properly address the reader and make them understand the weight of the situation that families whom are innocent may be experiencing as a consequence of being in situations where war is involved. That's not the end, though. In the article, UNHCR escalating violence in Sudan, Al Fashir forces thousands to flee by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. The, the author asserts that the conflict in Sudan has caused people to be unable to live peacefully due to war impeding their freedom, which connects back to the poem written by Bob Dylan, and they share the same global issue. However, in this article, Um, the author supports their claim by providing details such as the duration of the war and how many troops are moving into the area, endangering civilians, along with also giving out numbers of how many civilians are being displaced. For example, the author says, "We are concerned about the possible siege of the town of El Obeid, hosting tens of thousands of eternally displaced Sudanese, which further exacerbate human needs in the region." This uses the authorical choice of ethos, which is appealing to the emotional side of the reader and trying to get them to realize the gravity of the situation in which civilians are facing in Sudan as a consequence of the war occurring in their hometown and being unable to escape peacefully due to troops coming in and massacring civilians and committing other violent acts on them. Nextly, uh, refugees trying to escape have been targeted, as mentioned, and women have been victims of sexual crimes inflicted by soldiers, which shows how um, throughout this war, the soldiers are committing war crimes and they're raping women and children just because they are not part of their country and just because they are the so called enemy. But these are civilians. Evidently, the author then goes on to say the UNHR's CR strongly urges all parties to refrain from violence and especially attacks on civilians along the displacement routes. Civilians should never be targeted and their safe passage must be guaranteed. Which goes on to show that uh, the UN wants civilians to be able to escape the war, especially unscathed, and they are using facts in order to um, push out this message that the Great Protection violation, that the Great Protection guaranteed to civilians is being violated. Lastly, the author then goes on to outline the importance of helping the fund that is supposed to appeal for humanitarian aid for the people living in Sudan. And they go on to say only 27% funded while the needs continue to intensify, which is supposed to use a strategic placement of ethos to convey to the feelings of people by using facts. And it's supposed to highlight the importance that civilians outside of Sudan need to donate to the cause in order for these innocent people to be able to receive food, shelter, and adequate clothes during a time where they can't necessarily get it from anywhere without uh, risking their own lives, the lives of their children, and possibly risking even more than just that. The organization seems to be running in hopes of getting people to become aware of the issue in Sudan, along with raising funds for refugees fleeing from the war to change society's usual ignorance of conflicts outside of their own country. And overall, this relates back to Bob Dylan's poem by showing how people are usually ignorant about war and will only start to care about it if it starts affecting their country and their own people. If it doesn't affect them, then they have no reason to care, which is the logic by which they go by. And these two, the article and Bob Dylan, are just trying to show that people should start caring more about war, especially in the world conflicts, even though they may not affect the people of different countries directly, they can still affect the world. And innocent people, innocent children, innocent men are being killed and brutalized as a result of war. And without funds, organizations like the UN are not able to help out such people from escaping their dire situations.